Hello everyone, this is Carla and welcome back to the studio and thank you for joining me for another episode of Throwback Thursday. So we're continuing on with Christmas, and for this episode I will be using the Candy Cane Season Photopolymer stamp set along with the coordinating Candy Cane Builder punch. So for my first card I have an 8.5 by 5.5 inch piece of sweet sorbet cardstock scored at 4.25. I have a 5.25 by 4 basic white, a 5.25 by 1 3/4 Call Me Clover, a 5.25 by 1.5 inch piece of basic white, and a 5.5 by 2 3/4 inch scrap of basic white, and a 4.5 by 3 inch scrap of white as well. So I will start off with folding and burnishing my cardstock. Try and fold it straight. Okay. And for this piece, I will bring in my greeting. It says, "'Tis the sweet season." And my ink colors that I'll be using for this card is Call Me Clover and Sweet Sorbet. So I will stamp my greeting in the Call Me Clover green. And I will stamp that down in the bottom right hand corner. Okay. And then I'll take this and I will adhere it to my card base. So, okay. And then I will take my Call Me Clover piece and I will center that. See about, move over just a little bit. Okay. And we'll set that aside. And then for one of my pieces here, let's see, we'll use this one. I'm going to stamp my bow, so I'm going to do the outline in the Call Me Clover. And just stamp them on the bottom here. I'm going to stamp 3 of those. And then I'm going to bring in some scrap paper. I'm going to ink up the solid bow, stamp it off, and then I'm going to stamp over the outline to fill it in. Okay, so I'm going to set these aside. We're going to punch those out, and I'll close up my Call Me Clover ink pad since we're done with that. And then I'm going to bring in my Sweet Sorbet. And then on this other piece, I am going to stamp the candy cane. Move that out of the way. So I'll do the outline and I'll stamp 3 of these. So, and then we'll bring in the filler piece. And for this one, I'm not going to stamp off. And that didn't stamp fully. Let's see if I can line this back up. Okay, pretty good. Now let's fill this in. Okay, that one. All right, we're going to redo that one after I stamp this other one. It's just a little too off for me. Okay, so let me flip it over and let me bring in the outline again. Wow, it's a lot of ink. Getting a lot of ink on this block. Okay, let's try lining this up. Okay, we'll go with that. And let's close this up. Okay, so for my candy canes, I'm going to punch them out with that along with my bows. And then for this strip here, I'm going to bring in my Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine, and I'm going to emboss that with the wrapped in texture embossing folders. I can talk. And I'm going to use this pattern right here. So I will get that stuff. I will punch this stuff out and I will be right back. Okay, so let's bring in all our pieces. I'm going to take this embossed piece, add some adhesive, and then I'm going to center this onto the Call Me Clover strip, like so. And then let me bring in my dimensionals. Add some on here. I made a sample card of this earlier, and lining up the candy cane was like no problem at all, so I don't know what happened earlier. When it came to stamping these, it just seemed like it was a hot mess. But we got them done. But each card's going to have a candy cane on it, so at least one candy cane on it. Actually, let me bring in my scissors and cut these in half. Oh no, actually, no, we're not. Okay. I don't know what's up, but it's like all of a sudden I forgot what I'm doing. We're not putting dimensionals on there. We're actually going to glue these on top of these candy canes. Okay, so I'm going to put each one across here. So I'm going to start on either end and do those first, and then I'll add the one in the middle. So that way there's an even, it's easier to have them evenly spaced apart. And put one here. And then this one in the middle. Okay, and then for the bows, and just add a little bit of glue in the middle, and then I'll just place that right on top like so. Okay, and then I'm going to bring in my Wink of Stella, and I'll add some onto these bows. Give it a little bit of sparkle. And then I will bring in my festive pearls. These are currently in our annual catalog, and I'm going to add 3 of the little gold ones in the center here. One about there, and then another one, let's see, right about there. Okay, so that is our first card. On to our second. Okay, so for my second card, I'm also going to bring in the Candy Canes stamp set. This is a background red rubber stamp that I didn't mount. I should have mounted that before I started. And then I'll also be using the layering ovals dies and the stitch shape. So I'm using one of the scalloped oval ones for that. Okay, so let me just put this stuff aside and bring in my pieces. So I have a basic white thick measuring 8.5 by 5.5, scored at 4 1/4. I have a piece of polished pink measuring 6 by 5.5. I have a 3.5 by 2 3/4 inch piece of Coastal Cabana, a 4 by 2.5 piece basic white. This piece will be using for this stitched oval here. The Coastal Cabana will be the scalloped. We're going to stamp the candy cane background on the polished pink. Then I have another piece of basic white. This measures 3 by 2 3/4. We'll be stamping candy cane on that. And then I have a 3 by 1.5 inch piece scrap of basic white for the bow. So I will, like I said, I'll set these to aside because we're going to die cut and punch at the same time. So for the candy cane, I'm going to let me back up. These will be the colors of ink that I'll be using: Parakeet Party, Polished Pink, and Coastal Cabana. So for my candy cane, I'm going to stamp that in Parakeet Party. Let me bring in the outline piece and ink that up. And I'll stamp that in the middle. And then I'll bring in that filler piece with the stripes. Let's see if we can get this lined up. Okay. That's off a little bit, but it's not too bad. So we'll just leave it alone. And then for this piece, I'm going to stamp the bow, and I'm going to do that in Polished Pink. And let's see, we got the outline. And that first. And then we'll bring in the filler piece and our scrap paper because we're going to stamp off. And just fill in the outline. Okay, and we're going to punch those out, die cut those. And then another step that I'm going to do before I do the sped up part. So, well, first let's go ahead and fold and burnish our card base. we'll set that aside. Okay, so for that background, let me bring in my really large block and bring in the stamp, and it fits perfectly on there. And then I'm going to bring in my Versamark ink, and I'm going to ink this all up really well. So we're going to stamp and then add some white embossing powder, and then I will heat set it, and then this piece will actually be cut down to 5 1/4 by 4. Looks like we got it all inked up, and then I'll take my piece of cardstock and I'll just lay that down on top of it, and then I'll just press the paper and trying not to shift the cardstock. You want to make sure I got the edges. Now again, if any Versamark got on the very outer edge of the stamp and it leaves, that mark on there, it's not going to be a problem because that part will get cut off, because we do have to trim this down. I'm just making sure that all areas of this cardstock has the stamped image. Okay, and then we're going to remove it. Okay, put that aside. And now I'm going to bring in my Embossing Additions toolkit. So we didn't need our embossing buddy for this. I'm not going to need the brush. So this may get a little messy because we got a little container and yet a big piece of cardstock. So we're just going to add some powder and kind of do it in. See, this is what I meant by getting the edge of the stamp. That's not going to be a problem because that's just going to that'll get trimmed off. So essentially what we're doing is we're creating our own background paper with this. We're going to kind of give this card a bit of a whimsical feel with the colors that we're using. Okay, does it look like we got everything? Yeah. It looks like there's a little smudge right there, but I'm not going to worry about that. We may be able to cover that up. So let me get this all out of the way. Okay, so I'm going to heat emboss this, and then I will die cut these pieces and punch these pieces, and I'll be right back. bring in my guillotine paper cutter. Now this is long since retired, but I love using this for cutting my cardstock. So for this piece, I'm going to cut this down to 5 1/4 by 4. So I'm going to just start by taking a little bit off there. And let's see, 5 1/4. Okay, and then we want 4. So let me take a good chunk of this off. Okay, and then measure 4. Okay, there we go. So now we got our background. Okay, so let me move this out of the way. Okay, so let me bring in my pieces. Okay, so let's see, we want our adhesive, and we'll add, let's see, we will add this. I'm going to add a little extra on this piece since heat embossing it did warp the cardstock a little bit. And then I will center that onto my base. Okay, like so. Okay, and then I'll attach this stitched oval to my scallop piece. I'll center that. Like so. Now I'm going to bring in my Coastal Cabana ink, and I'm going to take my candy cane, and I'm going to place that right there because I'm going to stamp this greeting "Be Jolly," and just want to put that there so I can see my placement on putting the greeting. That out of the way. Actually, let me come down a little bit so I'm not struggling to see it. I'll ink that up, and then I will stamp that right there. Okay. All right. So I will add dimensionals to the back of this. And I will add that to my base. Place that right about, let's see, make sure we're straight. Place that about there. And then I'll add dimensionals to the back of my candy cane. I'm going to add, take these pieces that we cut, and I'll place them there so that way it doesn't get all saggy. We'll add that right there. And then we'll bring in our glue. And we'll add a little bit on the back of our bow. We'll stick that right there. And just hold it down for a moment. The glue that I'm using is the Combo multi-purpose glue. It's this glue here. Stampin' Up! Does sell this in the annual catalog. I just like to put it in one of these fine tip glue bottles. I do have a link to these in the description of the video. Okay, and then I'm going to bring in my rhinestone basic jewels, and I'm going to add a few to my card. So we'll add one. Yeah, that little switch part right there. You never know now. All covered up. And then I'll add another one right here. And then one more right up here. Okay, and then one more step. We're going to bring in the Wink of Stella again. And we're going to add some to this bow. Okay. So that is our second card. On to our third. Okay, so for my third card, I'm also going to be using the rectangle stitched dies. I'm going to be using these two pieces right here, and also the winter snow embossing folder. So for my pieces, I have an 8.5 by 5.5 inch piece boho blue scored at 4 1/4. A piece of Seaside spray. These two go very well together. 5 1/4 by 4. I have a 3.5 by 2.5 inch piece of bubble bath. That I'm going to die cut with this larger stitched rectangle, so I'll set that aside. I have a 3.5 by 2 inch piece of basic white, and I'll be die cutting that from here. I will not only die cut this, but I will also use the embossing folder for that as well after I die cut it, so I'll set that aside. This piece here, the Seaside spray, that's also going to be embossed with that folder. And then I have a 4 by 2 inch scrap of basic white. This I'll be using to stamp and punch from. So I'll start off by folding and burnishing my card base. And I'll set that aside. And then I'll bring in this piece here that I'm going to stamp on. Make sure I got no powder still on there. So I am using the colors of ink, Boho Blue, Bubble Bath, and Fresh Freesia. So I will take the what do we want to stamp first? Let's just, come on. We're gonna stamp the outline of our candy cane in the boho blue. We'll stamp that, make sure that's fully inked. We'll stamp that up near the top. Okay. And then, let's see, we're done with Boho Blue. And then I'll bring in my fresh freesia. And this greeting says, have yourself a sweet little Christmas. And that will fit in a candy cane. Okay, I don't know what the problem is on me inking up stamps, but I'm finding I'm getting more ink on the block than... Okay. And then I'm going to bring in the outline of the bow, and I'm going to stamp that in fresh freesia as well. And then I'm going to come in with my filler to that bow, and I'm going to stamp that in Bubble Bath. And this I'm not going to stamp off because Bubble Bath is a fairly light color anyway. There we go. Okay, so for this part now, I'm going to speed up the video. So I'm going to emboss this Seaside spray with this embossing folder. I'm going to die cut this white piece and then emboss it with this. I will die cut this Bubble Bath piece with this die, and I will punch these out with the punch. So I will be right back. Okay, so let me bring in my pieces. So a little tip, if you ever find that you don't have enough cardstock, excuse me, to hold, excuse me. All of a sudden now hold on, let me get a quick drink of water. Okay, so let's try this again. So if you ever find that the piece of cardstock that you're going to punch, there's not enough of it, hanging outside of the punch for you to hold on to, you can use the putty end of take your pick tool and you can line it up and then punch it. That's what I did with this piece. Okay, so let me put that aside. I'm going to adhere this Seaside spray piece onto my base. Seaside spray, that color, that was another color. It was an in color a couple of years ago. And it was another one of those that I really, really liked and was sad when it retired. Hoping someday down the road it'll make its way back into the color lineup. Okay, so I'm going to set that aside. So for these pieces, I'm going to adhere this white piece onto my Bubble Bath. Center that. Like so. And then I will take this piece and adhere that down to my card base. Center that, like so. And then I'll bring in my dimensionals, and this time I will be putting a dimensional onto my bow. Try to arrange this so it doesn't poke through the outside of the candy cane. Okay, and then let me bring in my scissors, and I'll trim some of these up to put on my bow. Okay. And then let's go ahead and adhere these pieces down. The candy cane right here. Move it up just a little bit. Okay, and then we'll add my bow. And I'll stick that right here. And then just like the other bows from the other cards, I'm going to add some Linka Stella to this bow as well. Okay, and then I'm going to bring in the Rhinestone Waves Basic Jewels, and I'm going to use this color right here. Offhand, I can't remember what color that was. I don't know if that was Misty Moonlight. Yeah, maybe Pool Party, Coastal Cabana. Okay, so let me take one of these, and we'll add one over here. And then let's see, take this one, add it down there, and then a little small one we'll add up here. Okay, so that is my third card. So let me move this out of the way, and let me bring in the other two cards that we made. So we started off with this traditional red and green card, and then we created our own background with the white embossing using the candy cane's background stamp, and then our final card using more of the blues and the purples and pinks. So I hope that you like these cards that I made for you today. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already done so, please subscribe. It does help me in growing my YouTube channel. So I will be back next Thursday with another throwback, and it'll be another retired set of Christmas stamps. I do have a lot of them, so I don't know which one I'm going to pull out. So I thank you for joining me, and I hope you have a blessed one. Bye bye.